All right, let's get to the final game of the slate. St. Louis BattleHawks at the Houston Roughnecks. On FanDuel, the Roughnecks are favored by 8. I think at one point I actually saw this line get up to 8.5 at a book, but now we see it at 8 here. And the over-under is 50.5. So the highest total of the slate. Sean, what do you think here?
Yeah, so this is another matchup where both teams look really good week one. And, St. Louis, we thought they'd be, sort of a bottom feeder, but they're probably more middle of the pack. So I think you can get some value on them here. I did take them when they were plus 8.5. I wish I bet a little bit more at this point, but yeah, I think it's too early to be giving Houston, that much credit. Like you said, it could be more that the LA defense is just terrible. We don't really know quite yet. And, St. Louis knows it's coming. Houston attempted, 90% of their plays were a pass. So they'll know it's coming. And St. Louis went into Dallas and won week one, despite, they had the backup quarterback. Dallas is supposed to be one of the better teams. So I think we need to give St. Louis a little more respect after week one. So I like them anything greater than 7 here.
Raymond, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's value on St. Louis because if you look at, all right, Houston, they go and they play the Wildcats, and I'm looking at the grades for the quarterbacks, and even though Philip Walker put up that big game with the 4 touchdowns, the 1 pick, he's actually the 5th rated quarterback in PFF's grades, and Jordan Tamu, the quarterback for St. Louis, is number 3. So that tells me that, there was something, there was a little bit to do with that LA defense for Houston. And, St. Louis, they got a tough win. They kind of grinded out a tough win against a team that we thought was very good. So yeah, I think the value will in fact be on them. And, I'd still like Houston, but I think last week was the time to kind of buy in on them in the futures market. And now it looks like a good opportunity to kind of play that recency bias and fade them for St. Louis.
One thing that was interesting is that we did see last week St. Louis just dominate the ball. 71 plays, I believe, on offense. A lot of them were running plays. I think they were the most run-heavy team in the league. And so it'll be curious to see if they go that way again. In an attempt, obviously, to keep the high-scoring offense off of the field for the Houston Roughnecks. And so I'm curious what that might end up doing with the over-under. But if I had to lean, I don't know. I guess I would probably still lean on the under for a lot of these totals. But, yeah, the Houston Roughnecks, I think if there is one team that really on their own has the capability of driving a game to the over, that's the team. Like, they have the offense that is fully functional at this point to do that. DFS plays. Anything stand out to you guys? One guy who's interesting to me is Nick Hawley, who is technically a running back, but they are using as a wide receiver who's lining up and who's actually getting a decent share of targets on a team that throws the ball relentlessly. And at running back position where few guys have really distinguished themselves at this point, to find a player who I think could be pretty contrarian and who isn't expensive, who has some locked in targets on a high scoring offense, that might be kind of intriguing. Who has caught your eye, Sean?
Oh, I love the Hawley call, and he also used to play quarterback. And even though we didn't really see that double forward pass week one, you never know. We could see teams get more aggressive. So he'd be a guy that could be a part of those plays. So I love him at running back too. That's a great call. And then I think at QB, Jordan Tiamu, like at 8,900 with his rushing upside, he's probably the top play in terms of value for me at quarterback. He had 9 rushes for 77 yards, and he looked like a great runner. And this week, against Houston, he might be forced to throw a bit more in a potential shootout. So I just love him at that price. On Houston's side, I know everybody realizes that Houston is, basically the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, they're going to throw a ton. They're a great DFS team, especially at wide receiver. But I think a good pivot play would be taking James Butler, spending up to take the running back. He's a bit pricey, so he's in no way like a must play. But just a way to pivot off the pass-heavy offense. And he scored a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown last week, and he returns all their kickoffs. So I think we didn't really see any return touchdowns week 1, but with the rules and stuff, I think it is valuable to have a guy that's returning kickoffs. So I think he has a ton of potential at 6,300. Like I said, he's not a slam dunk play. He's more of a spend up to go contrarian and pivot off the Houston passing attack.
Raybon, what do you think here?
I think first of all, I think the running backs are definitely want to pay attention to them. I'm looking at the running backs for St. Louis because, as you mentioned, Friedman, they play ball control, and Matt Jones, he had 21 carries for 85 yards. He played 48 snaps, according to Pro Football Focus. That was double Christian Michael, who played just 23 snaps. And then Keith Ford also mixed in for a handful, ended up getting a touchdown. But I think if they are going to continue to play like this, Matt Jones could have tremendous upside just because of, most of these teams aren't really that run heavy. And St. Louis was that exception to the rule in week 1. The average team had about 22.3 carries per game, and St. Louis had 39. So that means the rest of the league averaged just under 20 carries per game. St. Louis almost doubled them up in carries, and the average team 94.3 rushing yards, St. Louis 191. And then I'm looking at the broken tackles. So PFF has Matt Jones with only 3 broken tackles. That's, there's a bunch of guys with 3. And then another 4 guys have 4 or more. So that tells me that all those carries, and he was kind of consistently, sustaining, just kind of playing physical and consistently making strong runs. And this team was making strong runs. And I think that's something to kind of keep in mind, because there could be 1 or even 2 of the backs, even Michael maybe could end up outscoring a lot of the rest of the league just because of that volume. So I think they're a team I'll definitely be looking at. And then for those same reasons, I think I am going to be fading Houston a little bit on offense. Number 1, because again, I think that their opponent in week 1 was a little bit weak. And then, number 2, that ball control on the other side. So St. Louis, they have the number 3 ranked out of the 8 teams run blocking in terms of in week 1. And so I think St. Louis there's definitely a danger of St. Louis kind of keep away here.
Christian Michael still screwing over fantasy investors in the year 2020.
Seriously.
It's pretty amazing. 7 carries, 0 yards.